All right, welcome everyone. This is Carmen Mazzara, APSIA's Executive Director. I'm delighted that you could join us today for a presentation on visual storytelling. We're joined by Michael Green and Brian Wright of Texas A&M University, and they're going to walk us through a number of different pieces based on their experiences. But as we go through the presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll do our best to take questions as we go through, and hopefully we can get any unresolved issues or things you'd like to explore covered. So with that, since it is 11 a.m. Eastern, again, welcome everyone. I'm delighted to have you here, and I'll turn the floor over to Michael and to Brian to introduce themselves and kick things off.
All right, well, howdy everyone.
Howdy everybody.
We say howdy at Texas A&M. That's our official greeting. So wanted to start off with that. Can everybody see my screen? Just write in the chat there. Make sure everything's working. Perfect. All right, well, yes, like we said, I'm Michael Green. I am the manager of emerging and interactive media for marketing communications at Texas A&M.
And I'm Brian Wright, Director of Visual Media, Marketing Communications at Texas A&M.
And those are our faces, so you know who's talking.
That's us.
We wanted to give you just a little background of Texas A&M, because we know a lot of you are from around the world, we heard. So we are a very large university, over 60,000 students on campus, in a small college town in the middle of Texas. We have 13,000 freshmen every year or more, and they are always fun. It's always a fun first week of class when they don't know where they're going.
You can tell who they are.
And then we've got around 40 to 41,000 applications every year. So quite a large school. And then the reason that you're hearing from us is because we have a world-class School of Government and Public Service through the Bush Foundation, the Bush Library we have here on campus, and then the Bush School of Government and Public Service, which is something we're very proud to have on campus. And the Bush's influence on our campus cannot be understated. So we are here to talk to you just about how we tell our story. You know, we are a historic university. We're 1876. We have a lot of unique traditions, and if you know anything about Texas A&M, you know we have a lot of weird things that we do around sports and around campus, and so we have a lot of stories to tell. And so Brian and I sat down and we're like, okay, let's talk about how we tell our story in all different types of ways. And so that's what we're here to talk to you about today. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you get something out of it. And again, please ask any questions you have throughout. We can stop and talk and chat. I feel like that's more engaging. So yeah, please write your questions down. Oh, my microphone is cutting in and out. Okay. Well, let me know if it actually breaks and you don't hear me anymore. All right, so I'm going to pass it off to Brian here, who's going to just talk about story in general and how to think about that.
All right, thanks, Michael. Also, a super big, huge shout out to Susan Robertson for hooking us up on this great opportunity. Thank you, Susan. This has been a lot of fun. Michael and I really enjoyed putting this together. We both share a big passion for storytelling, not just through visuals, but any way possible. And that's what I want to touch on just a little bit here as we start off. And before we dive into it, I just want to say that we're by no means the experts. We don't see ourselves as over anything or anybody. These are just some strategies and some ideas that hopefully can lead to some discussions and hopefully some inspiration. This is a big reason I like to go back to the storytelling sort of thing, because some people ask me, when did you know you wanted to be in video and film production? Well, I didn't really. And then some people ask, when did you know you wanted to be in photos? When did you know it really all goes back to storytelling. It's always been what I have wanted to do. When I was in kindergarten, my teachers would bring me, after I ate my lunch out of my $6 Million Man lunchbox, or maybe it was Hong Kong Fooey, I don't remember. But I would eat my lunch and they would take me to the library, and I would sit with this huge tape recorder with a little cheesy microphone coming out of it, and people out there around my age know what I'm talking about, that I would just tell stories as a kindergartner, and the teacher would come and get me and say, "Okay, it's time to come back to class." So my passion, and that came from listening to Peter Pan storytelling, little 45 records that I just loved. So that kind of developed my passion, and that went on to high school and acting on stage and pantomiming. Again, it was just a different avenue of telling stories. And then I went to college. I wanted to be into broadcasting because I was really into sports, and I wanted to tell stories through sports. And then film came along and video. So my point in telling you all this is not just to give are we having microphone issues?
Yes, we're going to change microphone 1 second.
One moment, please. Stand by.
All right. How's this for everybody?
Better? Is this better for everybody? Microphone?
Oh, right. So sorry.
Okay, all good? All right, here we go. So I was telling you all that not just to give a shameless plug for myself. I apologize for that. But I just wanted to illustrate the ideas of the different forms of storytelling that we can get into. And the word story is it's what's that? What's wrong? Oh, microphone's up here. Okay. Sorry guys, can you hear me now? Okay. I thought this was interesting as I looked into the word story. It's one of those words that the longer you look at it, the weirder it looks. I guess like all words. But I started looking into the history of the word story because I'm a bit of a history buff, and I'm a big picture kind of person. I like to see where things came from. The word story from the 13th century is an account of some happening. It's just something happened, and let's talk about it. And then about a century later, it started evolving into a recital of true events. So tell me a story. It's something that really happened. And then a couple of centuries later, it evolved into a narrative that could be true, could not be true, but it was entertaining. And in a way, it even became kind of a euphemism for a lie. I thought that was interesting. So really back about the 16th century was when we started looking at the word story and storytelling as a means of entertainment. And then around the 18th century, there was actually someone that you could be categorized as a storyteller. 19th century newspaper articles became, featuring those stories. The 20th century, it started to come in, oh, that's the story of my life kind of saying. It's a sad truth. What's your story? Get into those sorts of things. So as a result of the evolution of the word story, what we kind of got into and what kind of where we are now in the 21st century, in my opinion anyway, it's what I've heard referred to, and I agree with it, as emotional infotainment in storytelling. Meaning people expect to see something quick, they want to be entertained, they want to be informed. I have a fellow producer here on campus that says a good story is you're making someone laugh, you're making someone cry, or you're telling someone something they didn't know. So emotional infotainment is kind of what we're going for here. You can have a video, you can have a photo, you can have an article, you can have a 360 video. Packaged content is something that we're really trying to get into here. So and let me explain that. Like I said, you can have all those different forms of media, but if you put the article together and you have a photo, click here for more information, click here for a longer video with more information, click here for a 360 of the lab that we're talking about that this research is being done in. And you have hyperlinks going to people's bios that the articles are about. So having that packaged content and releasing to the right audience at the right time. And we'll talk about relevance and timeliness down the road in just a second. But the packaged content is very important. I'm bringing up Michelle Couchette. I don't know how many of you know her. Some of you may have heard of her. Many of you may have never heard of her. But I bring her up because she has gone through 3 bouts of tongue cancer. Now, what does that have to do with storytelling? Her job is international communicator, speaker, and author. And so going through these 3 bouts of tongue cancer, it had become a huge challenge for her to talk and a huge challenge for people to understand what she was saying when she did talk. So then the packaging, she had to look into that, and yes, the package is important, but let's unwrap that package and see what's really important. And what's inside there is the content. And of course, it's always good to be the king. And content is king. That's what it's all about. Yes, you can have that great package and you can present it in that great attractive way, but at the end of the day, it truly is all about the content. And what kind of content? Well, we got to be authentic and we got to be creative. And so we got to be authentic, creative. And there's no fooling our audience. Our audience is very smart. They have so many material at their hands now that they can see, do, learn about just about anything now, and they wanna see the real thing. The proof is in the package.
Yeah, I think I used to work in the Office of Admissions, and one thing we realized about this new audience of prospective students, these, I guess back then it was, the millennials, but now it's Gen Z. They care about authenticity. Because of how fast you can shoot video now, it's so much more about, I want to know what's happening now. I don't care if it's polished, I don't care if it's pretty. It's all about authenticity, which I think has been a huge shift in our visual storytelling.
Fully agree, and that's been a good challenge that we've had. They still expect great creative pieces and content, but they want the real story. Don't show us the bar stuff. Show us the real stuff. Wanted to bring this up because now we're touching on the packaging, and you can see here these are 2 of my favorite actors and storytellers, Mickey Mouse, Charlie Chaplin, and you can see it's not packaged in the greatest of ways. It's very simple, straightforward. It's just a picture, but let's talk about the how authentic it is. You got Mickey Mouse drawn there in old school Mickey Mouse. That's probably back from the 20s when he first started coming up, 20s or 30s, maybe 40s. And then you got Charlie there, who's I'm a huge Charlie Chaplin fan. And if you know anything about Charlie and his movies, one of his iconic images is him holding the rose, the flower from his movie City Lights. And so he's greeting, and in that movie, he's greeting the love of his life. And this is the way he's greeting Mickey Mouse. And so even if you don't know anything besides just the image, the likeness of these 2 characters, it makes you smile, it makes you giggle a little bit, and it gives you a warm, lovey-dovey feeling. They're meeting each other, they're greeting each other. It could be generational, it could be that day, their modern day, or if you know these characters in depth, it could mean even more to you. So this really shows the creative meeting authenticity, I believe. Last Charlie Chaplin picture, I promise, but I wanted to show this one, not just because I'm a huge fan, but again, this illustrates the creative and authenticity. It's a simple in-character photo, both Charlie and the dog. Even if you haven't seen this movie, you can, if you know a little bit about the character of the tramp, he's homeless, he is a tramp, and he's got a dog. And you can kind of guess what the story is along that way. But this man, Charlie Chaplin, was such a good storyteller that back then there wasn't a whole lot of camera trickery. It was point the camera and shoot the stage show. And he knew that. And not only that, but you don't have any sound. And of course, he knew that too. He fought that for a little while. But he would get into his character, and the visual image of his character was so important to him that I can tell you this, and it's kind of a sad story, but it talks straight to his character, so to speak. Uh, he knew it was so important to establish that relationship with this little dog that he lived with him, he played with him. They became one, literally. They became best of buds, and you can tell that in this photo. And I'm sure Charlie wanted that to happen in this photo, for to tell that story. But they got so close, uh, became so authentic. At the end of the filming, Charlie had to leave the country or leave town for a little while, and the dog missed him so much that he ended up crying from a broken heart. And I know that's a downer, but I think that speaks a lot to the commitment of telling that story, the commitment to the character, and commitment to the importance of the visual. Sorry for the downer. Okay, now we're into some A&M type visuals. This is one of my favorite pictures that I got to take. I'm not real big into headshots. I'm not big into staged shots. I like capturing the moments and telling the story that way. This was a free football game. We have our core of cadets who march into our football stadium into Kyle Field before every game, and folks line the streets up and down on our campus to witness this, to watch it. And of course, with the big tradition around town and of Aggies coming in from all over the world to witness this, of course, there are some young Aggies that want to be involved, and their parents wanting them to expose to these Aggie traditions. And I was just making my rounds on this particular day. This was a good while ago, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and I just saw this boy on the top of his dad's shoulders, overlooking this. And you see the chord, they're progressing in a natural way, left or right, and the boy is looking into his future. Could be his future, it could be just that he's an Aggie fan, who knows? But there's all sorts of stories that this could tell in a very authentic way. And from a technical aspect, if any of you are involved in talent release forums and that sort of thing, this was a public setting. This was not inside the stadium. This was outside, and so we're very particular. We're very careful about images that we share that can depict individuals that are recognizable. That's what we go by. That's our key. And and in this one, you can't really recognize any faces, which is kind of multi-purpose. One, it can save us the trouble of going through the process of finding out who the kid is, finding out who the cadets are and people in the background, and getting their signatures. But then it also offers the opportunity of, hey, plug yourself in right here. You belong here, but your face here, kind of thing. And the branding on the kid doesn't hurt much either. So that was a big plus. Here's another one inside the Memorial Student Center, or we call it the MSC. It's kind of the living room for our students here on campus. And this was shortly after our renovated MSC opened. It's a two-story, three-story. It's 2 stories. It's huge. There's lots of action, high action. We wanted some branded imagery of this newly renovated living room for camp, but we also wanted to show how lively it is. And so I applied some motion blur with my shutter and different technical aspects that we could get into if you wanted to, but I'll spare you those technicalities side of it. But just you adjust your shutter to get this blurry motion to kind of tell the story of it's very lively there. But you got your branding, you got the historic, meaningful visuals in the background there, along with the student in the front showing the progressiveness of the space. Now this is a little shout out to the Bush School, because this was a Bush School Habitat for Humanity program that took, I'm assuming perhaps they do it every year, but this was a few years ago. And Habitat for Humanity, when you go out and you build houses for the needy, for those who need it. And the Bush School students went out and they built this house, and we needed some visuals, not only for the Bush School, but we also wanted some to tell the story of the core value here at Texas A&M of selfless service. And so you recognize that, you know what your need is, you know what the story is, you look around, you position yourselves in a way that really helps tell that story. The sun is coming up, the sun is rising. It's a new day for these people that this house is being built for. It's done on the backs of these Bush School Texas A&M students doing the heavy lifting. The family is looking on. The Aggies are coming in to do this lifting with a new window there open with the sun rising just over it. So when I go out, I just try to capture those to tell that emotional side of it, and not just show the action of the students working, but what else can we get out of this visual to help tell the story. This is one of our core cadets bringing up a flag. This was actually at a film shoot of ours, and when we have film shoots, I also like to go out and shoot photographs to capture the moments, because the lighting is always right. All the actors are signed off, ready to go. And this was, I believe, in between takes when he was practicing raising the flag. And so I tried to position myself again where you can plug in your own face, put your face here. You can tell it's the American flag, but you don't have to see the whole thing. The focus is on the hands, because he's again, the core value of selfless service, and the core cadets and some going into the military and serving our country that way, but also the commitment to patriotism on our campus. It's a really big deal here at Texas A&M, and flags are raised and lowered every day by the Corps of Cadets. And this photo actually made its way into one of our statewide monthly magazines, Texas Monthly, as a selfless service ad for Texas A&M. Staying with the selfless service theme here and core value, again, no faces. The skin color, this could be just about anybody, but it's depicting the big event, which is a student run, the largest student run one-day service event that we have around here. We have thousands and thousands of students come out early on a Saturday morning and go out into the community in March and just do busy jobs, yard jobs, paint jobs for people out in the community. And we always need good visuals to help tell that story, not only post-event, but promoting the event and to promote the core values at A&M. So you can tell that this person is working. He's dirty. A lot of our photos that we have are of nice, clean students, having a good time, and those are important too. But this to me can really help tell the story of they are committed to doing the hard work for people out in the community. Had to get into a little bit of athletics. It's hard to talk about A&M without getting into athletics. This was taken, I call this photo the entrance. That's kind of the title that I've applied to it myself. This was one of the first games of Texas A&M entering the SEC, which was the new conference that we went into 2012 after we left the Big 12 and into the SEC, and we were just looking for some visuals of telling the story of, hey, we're making our entrance, we're here, we're relevant, we're going to make a difference in this conference. And the sun was right, and they just happened to use a fog machine coming out, and the haze of the day was just right. And of course, you take 5,000 photos to get one. And this one was probably one of my favorites from that day. Now I wanted to talk about kind of being or placing yourself, being aware of what's going on, and placing yourself at the right place at the right time. The composition of this photo is not great. In fact, you really have to kind of look at it for a while to figure out your middle where to pull your attention into the right place. And so, from a technical aspect, it's not the greatest photo, but it's truly one of my favorites. These are the former students, Corps of Cadets, who come back and they do their own march in to Kyle Field, our football stadium, once a year. I believe they come in. And this was several years ago when President Bush would come and stand and review these the Corps march-ins, and a lot of them were straightforward, very serious. But I had this one former student who was excited to be in front of the former president and show his Aggie spirit at the same time, and wanted to wave his uh his 12th man towel, which is the towel that our fans wave at football games, in salute to President Bush. And of course, President Bush returned that salute straight to him and showed his appreciation. So I just thought that was a really neat moment. And you kind of have to anticipate those things happening and put yourself in the right position to tell the kind of story that you want to tell. This was much more recent. This was taken out at the entrance to the Bush Library when the convoy carrying Mrs. Bush, Barbara Bush's body to be buried at the Bush Library. The Corps of Cadets lined up along Barbara Bush Drive to honor her as she entered the Bush Library complex for the final time. And I had tons of expensive gear all around my neck and up on the camera ramp ready to shoot this. But I felt the need to capture something of the moment. This was a very surreal moment. The convoy had not arrived even in town yet. You can see off in the distance, um, I guess the commanders going through and inspecting each of the cadets, but they were all standing at attention, ready to go. And the convoy hadn't even arrived in town yet. Again, it's kind of an obscure angle showing the road. It's a high road. You know, she's taking the high road and into this area, and she's in a better place. And these cadets were there to recognize that and to salute her on in a line. And I mentioned all the expensive gear because this was actually taken with my iPhone, because it's what I had time to take out real quick and use. And so sometimes it's not your tool, it's your vision and what you see and how you can tell that story. And this is a perfect example of that. This was several years ago. This is Reveille 8. We are now on Reveille 9. But this was a rainy day. I forget who we're playing. It looks like Arkansas or Oklahoma. But this was before the day of we would have a full social media team in the stadium with us, and I had a whole lot of expensive gear all around me. And this again was part of the Corps Cadets march in before the game. And I saw Reveille from the other side walking in, and Reveille is our mascot, obviously. And I saw her in this raincoat, and I thought, oh my goodness, Aggies around the world would love to see this. But there's no way I can take it with any of these cameras and get it out immediately. And so again, I took out my iPhone, I squatted down and took 3 or 4 of them, and I think this was the best, showing her wet paws there, that it really was raining, but she's well covered up. And I texted that off to Krista Smith, who's now our director of social media, and she put that out on social media, and it blew up big time. So it's not only about storytelling, but realizing the relevance of what's going on. Aggies all around the world were tuned in to our social channels at this time, because it was a couple hours before the off, and so we knew that they would be monitoring those channels. We wanted to show that it was a rainy day, to show the conditions of the game, but we also wanted to show that, hey, Reveille is committed to being there, just like the rest of the Aggies are, but she's well taken care of and she's well loved, and so it was a very successful post. I'd like to get into some of our videos that we have. This is one on, believe it or not, peacocks and the warmth of animals, as we call them. And I'll just show it to you, and then we'll talk a little bit afterwards.
Many animals have different morphological traits that they use to keep warm when it's cold outside, like really thick fur or lots of feathers. So we set out to determine how the peacocks stay warm when it's cold outside, and we looked at this from a behavioral approach to find out how they modify their behavior when it's cold, and found that they exhibit two different postures that helps them keep warm. One of which is the head top posture, in which they stick their head under their wings so that they don't lose heat through their head. And then another technique they use is basically just to spend a lot of time in what we call the leg tuck posture, but it's mostly just them sitting so that their legs are really tucked up under all those fluffy feathers and out of the cold. We use temperature sensors that we attach to the heads of the birds in order to see how the temperature changed when they had their heads upright or when they had them tucked under their wings. So we also use thermal cameras so we could look for a difference in how those thermal regulatory postures might impact the amount of heat that is lost through those different body regions. While these birds are trying to stay warm in the cold weather, there are costs to them exhibiting these behaviors. And a predator can approach much more closely when they're in this posture, and it therefore makes them much more vulnerable to predation during these times. But the cost of increased predation might in some cases be worth it if it means they can stay warm when it's really cold out. So I'm Jessica Yerzinski, and I'm a professor in the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries Sciences at Texas A&M University, and I study avian behavior.
So what we were charged with there, and I didn't shoot any of that. That was Donnie Hall and Mark Guerrero in our office. They did a super fantastic job on that. In fact, it was picked up by some national news organization that took their raw footage and the story and turned it into this a national feature. But what we're charged with basically there was telling the story of this researcher who and this professor who researches the way animals stay warm. And well, we got to get more creative than that. And well, I got a peacock. Okay, well that's colorful. Well, how can we shoot that? And you could tell it was in slow motion. The slow mo kind of feeds the emotion a bit, but then there are different aspects to it too. The music, for example, it was a little tongue in cheek. It added a little carefreeness, I guess, if you will, to it, where it made it a little bit fun. That we know that this was kind of a quirky topic, but it was also a serious topic because they're protecting themselves from the weather, from predators, and it was an important story to tell. But at the same time, it's infotainment. You got to entertain the audience. So hopefully we made them, giggle a little bit about the quirkiness and showing a peacock. The video was at a peacock. But at the same time, hopefully we told them something they didn't know. A&M does research and can be able to tell how animals can stay warm and how we can help that. This is one this was kind of depicting something that we don't need a whole lot of help in on Texas, and keeping people entertained barbecue. That's a really big deal here. So this is one on Camp Brisket that takes place here on campus every winter, December or January, and I wanted to show this one because it's a good sample of, yes, it's a huge topic, barbecue here in Texas, but there's also some underlying themes and telling the story of how to get involved, the importance of this, and not just cooking it, but the importance here in this state of it's a big event. It's a family event to have a big barbecue. And we recognize that, and we wanted to kind of cater that to our audience.
Texas is about beef, and beef is about brisket. And if you're going to be a successful pit master, you've got to be able to master the brisket. The three people involved in what we call the Texas Barbecue Program at Texas A&M University is Davey Griffin, Ray Riley, and me, Sable. And our purpose here is to carry out the teaching, research, and extension activities of our department at our university. There just came kind of an interest in this out of working with group called Food Waste Texas to do some things more educational in the barbecue arena.
Camp Brisket is a wonderful partnership between Food Waste Texas and Texas A&M, where we can give people a window on the history and the culture of Texas barbecue.
Camp Brisket offers a variety of activities. We have panels that deal with wood and smoke, pit maintenance, and life as a pit master. Participants get to eat different kinds of brisket. And then we learn a lot about trimming and science of anatomy and all kinds of things like that. But I think the biggest thing is that participants get to rub shoulders with a lot of the famous pit masters.
Jeff, Davey, Ray, all those guys doing such cool stuff with meat, and it's cool that they kind of bring in like more of an educational kind of vibe to something that's really not that education-y in the first place. You know, you can see all these little light bulbs go off above people's heads, like, oh man, I never thought of that.
We enjoy the camp. We enjoy meeting the other barbecue people, and it's just a pleasure to be here in A&M. Carrie had 2 daughters here in A&M at the same time, so we're true-hearted Aggies.
This is my first trip to Texas A&M. If you want to learn about brisket, there is no better place on the planet than Camp Brisket.
Because each time you come back, I've honed my skills working with the talented people that are here. It's one of those things that Dr. Sable, Dr. Griffin, and Ray really truly know how to build community. You know, we've spent our careers working with the public. As part of the land grant mission at Texas A&M University, we're involved in teaching, research, and extension. And one of the things that we love doing is being able to do these workshops where we have a chance to meet people from all walks of life that come to them, and they become part of our community here. And I think that's part of the DNA of Texas A&M University.
So I know it's pretty close to lunchtime, so sorry to do that to y'all. But we'll see you all here next January for Camp Brisket. But that one was a fun one to see come to fruition. I've taken up a lot of time. Michael's got a lot of information to share with you, and so that ends my portion of photo and video and storytelling.
Well, there's one question, Brian.
What's up?
Someone said, who decides the chosen content in these 2 cases? Did the idea come from the schools and departments or from the central Marcom office where we work? And then how do you balance the school and university preferences for the content to cover?
Sure, great question. It's both, actually. For both of these, that I just featured, they were through the College of Ag. We have a really good working relationship with all of our college communicators at each college, I should say, to be specific, and Susan Robertson being one of those at the Bush School. This one was Jeff Poole at the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, who they pitch ideas, talk about the articles that they're writing, and then we work with them on what might make really good as far as a visual, rather photos or videos or both, or help them like we discussed with a full package deal. So to answer the question, it really comes from both. We can't make videos for everyone, and so we've become very selective on what we think is seasonable, Camp Brisket, and what is relevant at the time. We did the Peacock. It was cold weather, so it was of relevance for us to talk about animals keeping warm and what might lead to a good visual storytelling opportunity, and both of these did. And so that's how we made that decision. But we also made sure that there was good Texas A&M general branding throughout. We try to throw in, look, without throwing in the face, again, you got to stay authentic. You can't be fake. But in any kind of real way that you can, throw in the brand, throw in the name, and keeping it real, but also keeping it on brand.
Awesome. All right. So, thank you, Brian, for all that. I've seen a lot of those photos since, I've worked here for a while, and I guess I'd never heard you tell the story behind some of them, and so now I appreciate those photos way more when I'm using them. So I'm Michael Green again. I'm the manager of Emerging and Interactive Media, which is a weird title. I think the first of its kind at Texas A&M, and I think what's good to do is explain why they gave me this weird title and kind of the mission behind it. So whenever there's a new technology, it's think of it like a train. So you've got the avant-garde, the artists, the people who are going to take a new technology and just do it and use it because it's there. And they'll just make things that really have no practical purpose, but they're doing it because it's there to be used. So there's always going to be the avant-garde, and then you usually have the early adopters who make a stream of content, but maybe it's not the most polished, maybe it's not the most useful, but they're trying to get it into the mainstream of use. And then you've got the mainstream, and finally things come mainstream. So Texas A&M has historically been not anywhere on this spectrum. We've been past the mainstream. I'm trying to fix the echo, guys. I'm sorry. We hopefully will end up right here, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to put Texas A&M somewhere between the mainstream and the early adopters, because right here in this space between them is where the news happens. It's when people are saying, oh, look who's first to use this. So that could mean anything. It could mean using augmented reality, which we're really trying to get into. But lately, the bulk of content that I've made in the past year or two has been in the virtual reality space, in the 360 video space. And so that's why Brian and I are talking to you today, because 360 video is a completely new concept to how we interact with stories visually. And I will pull up a 360 video here in a second if you have not seen one. If you have seen one, right here in the comments, because I want to get a kind of a feel of how many of you have actually experienced 360 content. But what's great about 360 video, to me, is that it gives the power to the viewer. You know, with a traditional video, you kind of get to direct the eye as the video maker. But when you shoot a 360 video, the viewer gets to look anywhere. They can look right behind you. They can look right at the person talking if there is one, or they, you know, it really makes the viewer part of the story. And that does a lot of things in our brains. So what people have said about 360 video is we've gone from storytelling to story living. People call virtual reality the empathy machine, because when you put a headset on and you are transported visually, audio, I mean, everything except for smell, really, you are now living in that space. And that can create an amount of empathy inside of you that a traditional video may not be able to, because you felt like you've been there. And I think that's the power of this type of medium, which we are all still trying to figure out where to go with it. But I think that's the one thing that's come out of this first wave of 360 content that has been really interesting. How to tell that story and how to allow people to have these experiences. So we shot these 360 videos, which I'll show in a second, but the main purpose of them was to go to South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. And Brian got this awesome video of this kid experiencing one of these VR videos. And I think there's something telling about
Are you swimming underwater?
the way this kid experiences it. There's no inhibition. You know, to him, it's something that, you know, he's in it. And he knew exactly what to do, to look around, to, you know, he knew he was in a new space. Whereas an adult, a lot of times when they put on the VR goggles, I have to tell them, oh, look behind you, you know what I mean? Like, move your head around and explain it to them. But, you know, with kids, they can adopt this sort of stuff quickly. But I think the cool part is you don't have to explain it to them. It's natural. So it's human. It's kind of like a natural human ability to accept that you're in a new world. We've kind of just learned our way out of it with traditional video. So I think at this point I'm going to show a 360 video, and I have to open a browser because it's emerging. It has not been adopted by Keynote and others. So if you guys if you want to see any of our videos, you can go to youtube.com/TAMU, That is our webpage, and then right here in the front is the Texas A&M in VR playlist. And I'll show our latest video, which is in Kazakhstan. And I won't show the whole thing, but I want to just show kind of what a 360 video is. So you can use your mouse and pan around the scene.
Like most people, the first time that I heard the word Kazakhstan, nothing came to mind.
It does have
I had
audio.
no associations with what Kazakhstan even meant.
And what's great is that
When members of the academy began to reach out across the globe, one wouldn't necessarily expect them to look at Texas A&M University to find.
so anyway, that's an example of a 360 video if you've not seen one. And so I want to talk about how to make one of these, and actually it's quite easy. And I don't want to say that too loud because this is kind of my job now, but it's quite easy because the 360 video cameras are very cheap. They are, maybe $300 to $700. They've got, as you can see, two lenses one on each side. They're kind of fisheye lenses. And what you do is you just go set it up in the scene. You stick it right in the middle of the action. You run away if you don't want to be in it, and then you press record. And it hits on what Brian was saying, which is that authenticity. You're there with whatever's going on, and you're right in the middle of it. And there's you can't really put lights, or you can't really put equipment behind the camera because everything's getting captured. And so I encourage you to go to our YouTube channel and look at some of the earlier videos we've taken and some of the later videos we've taken, and see that sometimes you see the audio guy in the scene, and sometimes there's nobody there. So we've kind of explored different ways to do it, but there's kind of three main concepts to making a interactive and immersive story. One is make it in an interesting space. You have to put the camera in a place where somebody may not have been before, or it's exclusive access. That's a really important thing because that keeps the viewer's attention. When they have something to look at in all areas, that's what they're looking for. And so then the third thing is a visual scavenger hunt. I like to try and place the action or things to look at least 3 around the camera. And that way, no matter where the viewer does choose to look, they have something to look at. One thing we're seeing with this type of content, and there's a lot of fear of missing out after you watch a VR video. Some people go back and watch it again just because they think, oh, well, there was something behind me that I didn't get to see. And so we're seeing a lot of good viewing rates on that aspect of things. So when it comes to telling a virtual story, there's 4 main aspects of this new emerging technology. And first is the camera tech. I showed you the cameras. I think that's where they're great. They're shooting 4K video in 360. They're stitching them for you. So the camera tech is where we need it to be. And it's getting better. Viewing tech is okay. It's definitely getting better. There's all kinds of goggles out there. There's all kinds of, the different resolutions coming out now. But what's great is you can view a 360 video like I showed you guys with your desktop mouse. You can click around. You can view it on your phone where you use the GPS in your phone, or the gyroscope to move phone around. And then you can also throw your phone in some goggles. So it's easy to view 360 video. So I think it's where it needs to be. But where we aren't where we need to be in this medium is the story, and then also the user adoption. So kind of going back to what Brian was saying about the early days of video, when the video camera first came out, what was the first thing TV did? What were the first TV programs? They were radio shows. They just filmed them because they were doing what's always done with this new tool. And I feel like with VR, that's where we're at. We've got these new cameras, we got this new ability, but yet we're just doing the same sort of documentaries, the same sort of interview pieces with this new technology. So we're all trying to figure out, what is the potential of VR? What kind of different types of stories could we tell now that we couldn't before? So again, we're right on the wave of this, and we're trying to figure it out. And then user adoption's hard. You can't make people watch VR videos. It is a very intensive experience, so you have to have your full attention when you're watching a VR video. Which is great for marketers like us, but for the viewer, it's definitely a big choice. And so, it'd be interesting to see where users go with this. So some interesting studies have been done. Some marketers from Magnifier made two videos. One was a flat video of a ballerina. One was a 360 video of a ballerina. Then they put them both on Facebook. They used the same ad spend, the same thumbnail, and the same copy. And they wanted to see how did people interact with the different types of video. You don't have to read all of this, but what you can see is that the cost per impression is way lower for 360 video. The click-through rate was way higher, and the percentage viewed was double. So double the viewers watched the video to 100%, which is insane. And then there was another study that did the exact same thing, but what they started finding was this video that they were linking to on Facebook was actually just a YouTube link, and they started seeing traffic not from Facebook. And they were like, where is this traffic coming from? People were sending it to their friends for an ad, which was, blew their minds. But what we're seeing is that people engage with 360 videos in a very different way. They want to watch them. They want to watch them to their, full extent. They want to maybe watch it again. And that's great for marketers, because of that FOMO factor, because of how new and, oh, wow, this may be the first 360 video they've ever seen. This is kind of what we're seeing, which is great, and what we've tried to kind of capitalize on at Texas A&M. So the first thing we decided to do with these videos, you saw the Kazakhstan example, was go around the world and try and tell these Texas A&M stories, but in this interactive and immersive way. So we've got Aggies all over the planet that are doing incredible work, whether that's former students, whether that's our faculty research, or even current students studying abroad. Aggies are doing incredible things and in all of these places. And so this idea merged with South by Southwest, where you have a global audience coming and you're trying to capture their attention. We asked ourselves, why should people at South by Southwest care about Texas A&M? Why should they care about your school, really? If they've already got a degree, if they're not looking to get a degree with your program, why should they care about you? And the answer we came up with was, well, we might be doing stuff in their area. So even if it's not, we don't want them to be a student here, we want them to know that Texas A&M is doing work in Germany, if you're from Germany, or they're doing work in the Amazon rainforest, if you're passionate about that issue. And that's the thing we wanted to capitalize on with these videos. And so we went and shot them in 360, and then at South by Southwest, we allowed people to choose, what do you want to see? I'd look at their badge and maybe I'd see they're from Europe, and I'm like, hey, did you know that Texas A&M has programs in London and Bonn, Germany? And I'd show them those, and trying to make those connections geographically, interest-based, just trying to make them care. And, using this pull of this brand new VR thing, which most people that walked up had, wanted to do simply because they wanted to do VR. They didn't so much care about our content until they, watched the video. So that's kind of, using the power of this tech. Now, that's kind of an external facing bit. We also do the exact same thing in the inverse. We want to tell Texas A&M stories to students who might want to come to campus. And so I'll jump to this slide here. This is our campus map. We took the 360 photos and videos around our campus, and we made some virtual reality tours. And we did this because, people may not be able to come visit our campus. I was a student tour guide when I was in school here, and one of the greatest powers I saw was when someone went on a tour, they were going to apply. It was a no-brainer. If they could step foot on campus and see our facility, see the spirit and the passion that we have, it was like, a 99%. They were going to at least apply to Texas A&M. But the problem is there's kids who can't afford to come, or their parents don't have the time to come to College Station. And so we wanted to create this experience for anybody, anywhere you are in the world, as close as possible. So we have an interactive map with these 360 VR tours. And then we took it one step further, and we sent these Google Cardboards to every high school counselor in the state of Texas. And so now every single high school student in the state can go to their counselor's office and tour Texas A&M. And so we've seen some amazing photos of these are kids 500 miles away down in the Rio Grande Valley touring Texas A&M University and seeing the opportunities they might be able to have, putting themselves in classrooms, in dorm rooms, being able to visualize themselves in the space. And that has shown, it's been incredible for our admissions team. So we've had a really great partnership with them. So yeah, that's how I've been trying to use some emerging tech to further what Brian does in the storytelling realm. Sometimes with emerging tech, it's unfounded. We don't really know what we're doing, but when you just try, you'll get some news. You'll get some, hey, wow, look at Texas A&M, like using this technology, and maybe that technology goes away in a year, and that's fine. We just want to be known as an innovator, as somebody that's going out there and trying and being on the front wave of emerging tech. So that's what we've prepared for you guys today. We'd love to spend the next 6 minutes or so answering questions if you have any. There's our contact information if you guys want to email us or follow us on Twitter. Here we have a question. Were you guys able to have numbers from the admissions team about the direct link between these videos and applying an enrollment? So I'd have to ask them. I don't think there's any direct numbers because we sent this to every high school counselor. It's kind of hard to ask a kid, did you do this specific thing before applying? But what's great, what we have seen from that is the relationship between high school counselors and the university and the kind of tools we give counselors to do their job. That one piece of cardboard and the content that they can pull up on their phone has been really great. Giving them tools to do their job well. They're obviously going to rave about Texas A&M and show their kids these things, because they have it. Whereas, other schools that may not have that, maybe they have less things to talk about. And so I think definitely going to be a correlation, at least with that. But, that's good. I will go ask the admissions team and see how that program has gone since we sent those out. Because I think we sent them out last summer. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's been a cool program to work with them. We work very closely with our admissions team, as well as our colleges.
Thank you, gentlemen. Well, while folks are typing their questions, I actually have one.
Okay.
A lot of our schools have just one tremendous person whose job it is to do comms and alumni relations and other things. So in some ways, the two of you already outnumber some of the comms teams at our schools. Can you talk a little bit about the resource-intensive nature of Brian being in a million places trying to shoot events, or Michael, the amount of time it takes you to put these things together? How can a team of one capitalize on this?
Yeah, I know that's a challenge. We work with campus communicators around here a lot because a lot of the colleges within the university do just have that one person, maybe two or three if they're fortunate. We try to help them as much as we can. We can't be everywhere, like you just stated. We've got I have two people and a student that help me out in visual media, and we also have a social media team. So we try to, and Michael in emerging technologies, and so we try to reach out and help as much as we can. We also put together different vendor pools together of local, regional, statewide, and national resources for people to choose from. We kind of call them ambassadors because we don't just see them as vendors. Local photographers and local video producers we also see as ambassadors who can come in and help us tell our stories. We work with them to make sure that they're on target with our brand and our messaging, and so they can come in and help us when needed. There's so many stories to be told that we even hire them multiple times through the year that we just don't have time to cover. So we try to pass on those that vendor information to the colleges to say, these are the folks that we work with on a regular basis for videos and photos. I'm sure they can help you as well. Of course, there are costs associated with that, but it just depends on the importance of the story, how far you want to, what your reach, how far you want it to reach, what audiences you want it to reach, what kind of a return that you're expecting. Depends on what kind of investment you're willing to make. Is this something that happens annually where you can put in a lot of resources into capturing at once, capture a lot of content assets to be used for years down the road, and so make that kind of investment? Is it a one deal thing to where you can make a video out of it and then promote it throughout the year that can help elevate your particular program or college? And so it's kind of a give and take of how far you choose to take the investment. We also keep a lot of assets here in-house that we offer, of course, for free to the colleges. If you're familiar with video terms, it's called B-roll, just general campus B-roll reels we give out all the time. General campus assets through photography we give out all the time, that for campus commuters to use for their presentations, for their promotionals, for their stories. So we try to help as much as possible with the understanding of budgets being a challenge and personnel.
And I would add on to that, use the people that want to tell your story. So a lot of times that's your former students. They can be some of the best brand ambassadors because of that authenticity aspect. You know, coworkers might want to hear, you know, from them what they thought of Texas A&M or their experience through the Bush School, more than they want to hear you talk about it as a communicator. And so giving your brand ambassadors the tools to do that, whether that's, videos or photos or even like making sure they tag you on LinkedIn. I mean, there's that kind of stuff, giving them the tools to do your job for you for free, That's what's great about brand ambassadors. They love your brand and use them.
And you don't necessarily always need those big expensive tools and personnel. A lot of those photos that I show were taken with my iPhone. And so if you got social channels that you want to throw up content like that, make it relevant, make it timely, and build that portfolio and build that reputation of telling that story. And maybe somewhere down the road you are provided with some budget.
Did you want me to answer some of these questions in the chat, or are we running over time? Okay, I will answer just some of them quickly, and then you can stop me if we're running over time. The editing process for 360 videos is actually kind of weird. You do import them into Premiere or Final Cut or whatever, just like any other video. They look really funky. It looks really warped, and when you kind of put it in a rectangle, it looks weird. But you edit them, cut them, throw all the scenes together just the same. When you add text on top of them, if you add it in the middle of the screen, it looks great. If you add it on the top or bottom where the warping happens, it looks really weird. So there's some technical things like that, but otherwise it's the exact same. You export it as a VR video, and then it pretty much, it's the viewer that takes the kind of YouTube or Facebook or whatever, takes the video and then wraps it into a sphere and does all the kind of hard work. But the editing's quite easy, I would think. And then the other question is, what metrics do you use to measure ROI?
Yeah, that's a toughie. That's obviously when we get posts on social media, you can go by likes and shares and reaches and that sort of thing. That's a given. But as far as some of the bigger videos, we get feedback from admissions, from prospective student centers, from the students themselves. From time to time, we hold, actually not near as often as we should, some case studies and some private showings to kind of screen our videos, especially the bigger branded ones targeted toward prospective students or donors. So there's no real firm, tangible metric in place that we take those measurements. It's just kind of a case by case basis, depending on what the tool, depending on what the release was. And a lot of times are for stakeholders, Board of Regents, the president, the chancellor, and if it reaches the people with the right message that they want to reach for the more targeted programming I'm speaking of, then we consider that a success.
For the Global Impact 360 videos, for example, one thing that I really liked was at South by, like I said, I'd find somebody, oh, you're from, Brazil. Why don't you watch this video about Peru? Trying to make it, tangible for them. But one thing we saw was, we had a lady from Brazil who watched that video and was like, I take care of macaws. And so she got linked up with that professor who was taking care of macaws in Peru. And, even if we got 1 million views on that video, that one person watching it and being able to connect and invest in our professors is way more valuable. So kind of getting the right content in front of the right person can even be more valuable than, going viral or whatever. So I kind of hold that standard to a lot of the experiential, immersive stories that we're trying to tell.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. And thank you to all of our guests for joining us and sharing your questions. Brian and Michael have graciously provided their emails, so if you do have other things that you didn't want to share in the public chat, I'm volunteering them to reach out. But we really appreciate this, and maybe APSIA 2 can someday be earlier on that curve than what Michael called post-mainstream, which is a polite way to say perhaps a little behind. We really appreciate all of your insights, gentlemen, and I look forward to seeing everyone at the next APSIA webinar, and if not then, at the Communications, Admissions, Careers, Alumni Relations, Development, etc. meeting in Boston in about a month. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all so much.